Hi, and welcome to the sixth installment in the Making Cyberglads series. I'm building a game called Cyberglads using the Godot game engine. After the last episode, I have the basics of a playable game in place. It's not much to look at, and it's really bare bones when it comes to the gameplay, but you can play Cyberglads for hours already if you really want to. If you watched my last video, you might notice that I changed the splash page slightly. I added the NPC names next to each button, and I added a blue play button on the left of the screen. It basically does the same as the first button on the right, namely loading the arena with the Ernie character as the opponent. I'm going to change its purpose in an upcoming episode. But in the meantime, now that I have something to show, I'm going to ship it. I'm going to let anybody in the world play Cyberglads in its current state. In this, I'm following the lean philosophy that dictates that you should get a first viable version of your project out the door as quickly as possible and then iterate. It's obviously not the most interesting game in the world right now, but it's already playable, and I've decided to publish it on the cyberglads.com website. Why would anyone want to publish a game that's clearly far from finished, doesn't feature any custom art, sound effects, or music, only has one level, only single player mode, only 3 possible NPC opponents, and very basic rules and controls? Well, in the web startup world, there's a saying that goes like this: if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, then you've launched too late. I'm going to take it to heart. Of course, I don't expect to receive any awards or rave reviews at this stage, and I'm not going to make the game available on Steam. But there are advantages to publishing early and often as opposed to working in secret for years as a lot of indie devs do. For one thing, it makes you confident that you know how to export your game to your target platform and actually see how the game plays outside of your development environment. Exporting Cyberglads for Windows desktop is fairly easy with Godot. Let's give it a try. So, in Godot Editor, I'm just going to go to Project Export, and I have this little dialog that opens. So I've selected here the Windows Desktop preset, but with this little add button, you can choose to export to iOS and Android. One thing that I'm not going to show here is that prior to exporting a game, you need to download and install the export templates that you can get from the Godot website. I'm just going to show you the Godot website and the link to export the template. So these you'll have to download and install, and you can use Godot for that. So Godot doesn't ask me to do that anymore because I've already done it. So let's go back to my editor. So here I can choose from a number of options. I can add an icon, a custom icon for my game, a product version, etc. And in the resources tab, I can choose what to export. Do I export all the resources or only a subset of scenes or resources, etc.? I'm just going to keep everything to default at the moment, and I'm just going to export the project. I have to select a folder and a file name. So I'm going to use cglads 0.1.1 because 0.1.0 is a previous existing version. So I'm just going to save that. And just like that, I've exported the game. So let's just switch to my file explorer. And here you see that I have 2 new files here, one executable and one PCK file that contains the graphics and audio files, etc. for the game. And so both the executable and the PCK file has to be present in the same location for the game to function properly. And so now that I have exported the game, let's try it out here on Windows. I'm just going to double click on this, start the game. So let's go to my run window. So I'm going to play against Ernie. So here, see, this is another little thing that I've added. So the instructions on what keys to use in the game appear on top of the arena just before the start of the game and disappear 2 seconds afterwards. So let's see if I can beat Ernie. I can. And there. So as you can see, the game plays nicely on my As Is Zenbook. Let's just move back to Godot. And actually, I'm just going to show you the cyberglads.com website where you can download the game by clicking on this button. Of course, you have to be on Windows at the moment. Right. I've added a link to the export documentation below. Exporting the game wasn't very challenging, but it's given me the confidence that I can iterate rapidly and produce a working game from Windows whenever I want. A lot of would-be game devs end up overwhelmed by the task of building a game and never finish. That's a lot less likely if you can finish something at least playable every month or so. Of course, I only exported the game to Windows Desktop, which is the most straightforward platform to export to. Here are some references to export tutorials to other platforms. You can find the links in the video description below. J&M made a tutorial to export to Android, and Kimojalo put up a tutorial about exporting Godot games to iOS. Godot doesn't natively let you export to consoles because you need a commercial license to do so, and Godot, of course, is an open source project without an attached commercial entity. But a company called Lone Wolf Technology are licensed to port and publish Godot-built games to Nintendo Switch, PS4, and Xbox One. As I said, the first advantage of releasing early is getting to grips with the export workflow. The second big advantage is that I can now easily share the game with others. They can download and play it and tell me what they think. I'm not saying that you should tell the whole world about each intermediate version of your game. It's best to save your big marketing push for when you have something more impressive to show. But you can benefit from some quick tips from casual gamers who stumble upon your game and maybe give you some always welcome words of encouragement. That's it for this edition of Making Cyberglads. This one was short and sweet, but it concludes the first iteration on my game. If you're following along in Godot and wondering how I made something work, don't hesitate to reach out and I can explain in more detail. And of course, my patrons have access to the full source code. Just a quick reminder that if you'd like to sponsor my work, I have a Patreon page that I've linked to in the video description below. Otherwise, just feel free to download the game and tell me whether you were able to beat all three NPCs and what tactics you employed to get the better of them. Finally, I'd love to hear what you think I should be working on next. Thanks for listening.